Hi YouTubers! I thought I'd make a new video today and show you a couple of new things in my plant department. Normally I do fish and I do some orchid videos, but I thought I'd show you some of my other stuff that I grow. So first we'll start out with this windowsill here. I have a group of succulents, cactus, and a very large old aloe vera plant. So let's kind of take a closer look at what we have here. It's a nice little succulent and a little cactus. I'm sorry for any glare that we're going to get. It's very bright in this window. Okay, so we're going to take a look at my orchids and see how they fared the horrible, harsh, cold New England winter in this cold window. The one closest to us right here, which actually is in flower, was one of my original 3 that I had up in this windowsill. A couple months ago, I decided to, it had a lot of signs of growth, so I decided to put it in this glass jar. Now this is a pretty tall glass jar or vase, and in the bottom I created a little plastic, let's see if you can see it, it's a little plastic bowl that has holes in it and it's upside down, and that way I could put water in the bottom and keep the media, the bark and the sphagnum moss and all the other stuff in there, charcoal and perlite and oyster shells. And I could keep all of that off the water so there would be no wicking effect, but it would create moisture and hydration evaporating up into the bark and around the plant, which of course, as you know, they love. So let me spin it around here. We'll take a look at this flower. This is not the most impressive orchid flower in the world. And the main problem is this plant was not really happy over the winter. It just didn't have the best growing conditions. It's way too cold in here. Way too cold up in this window. So I think next winter we're going to try something different. I think I'm going to get some plant hangers and hang them in other windows because this one is just too cold. But in spite of all the neglect and all of the suboptimal conditions, this thing is in bud, it's flowering. I don't know if you can see it, but it actually has some new buds coming up on the tip. The leaves are firm. They're not floppy. They're nice and firm. The roots look really good. It's starting to bud out at the crown. It's creating new air roots. So it's actually, in spite of everything, it's coming back and looking good and flowering for me. So that's one of the 3. Now let's look at the little mini phal. Okay, you'll remember this guy. This was the little mini phal that had flowered for me. It just almost died up in this window. Really, this leaf, if you go back and look at some previous videos, it was completely limp and hanging down on top of the container, not happy at all, and almost dead. And the leaf itself was super, super wrinkly, and it's smoothed out quite a bit. It's become a lot firmer, and it has some pretty happy, healthy roots. So this guy survived, and now it is like in full force, growing new roots, growing a healthy leaf, and I'm sure it's going to leaf out, and it's going to be okay. I think that one's going to be okay, and it's actually going to do really well this summer. This was the one that someone just recently commented that it wasn't happy in this pot, and that's why it looks so sad, etc., etc. Well, let's take a closer look at it. You tell me if it looks like it's happy. So we've got some flower buds on this nice spike, and the spike itself is budding out at the end. Still not getting the hang of this macro thing. But anyway, now if any of you watch the video Brad's greenhouse, he is one of my favorite growers. He's got a beautiful greenhouse and he grows all kinds of, you know, beautiful orchids and other exotic tropical plants. And I just watched a video of his the other day and he said something that really surprised me. He said that once an orchid gets in trouble and the leaves go limp, once they're limp like that, they will never come back. The plant can rebound, and he said it will grow new leaves, but the old leaves will never recover, and eventually they will die and fall off. Okay, well, you know, all the leaves eventually die and fall off. But this plant is just living proof that what he said is not entirely correct. If you look at previous videos, you'll see that this plant was really in sad shape. And it was really sad and really limp. But now look at, this leaf is firm. Nothing's holding this up. This leaf has rebounded. This leaf has rebounded. Remember how purpley red they used to be? Now they're just pumped right up again. I mean, it's rebounded in such a way that I don't really know why he told everybody that, because, I mean, here I have 3 orchids that have rebounded. They were all limp, they were all sad, they were all looking pathetic, really. And all 3 of them are recovering. So, my point is, you know, everybody's growing conditions are different. Maybe because of his growing conditions, his leaves don't recover for whatever reason. You know, I'm not knocking what he said. I just want to point out that I have had a very different experience. And I think there's a lesson to be learned with orchids, is that they're different for different people based on care, based on all these different variables. The environment, you know, how you fertilize, how much humidity they have, you know, all these different things can affect how an orchid grows. So when you watch videos on, you know, how to care for an orchid, keep that in mind. Keep that in mind, because, you know, what one person says may not work for you. And you may say, well, wait a minute, I didn't find that to be true. And that's what happened in this case here. You know, Brad said that these leaves should not recover, and yet here mine are breaking his rule. But again, that may just be because of my conditions here in the kitchen, as opposed to his conditions in a greenhouse. I'm not really sure. I wish I could talk to him about that and see what he thinks about that. Is this a fluke? Or, I mean, you know, when you have 3 plants all rebounding like these are, I doubt very much it's a fluke. To me, it says they can recover and they can rebound. You know, if they get happy again, they have all their needs met. The mix that I have them in now is a little bit of a different mix. I've added one ingredient that I normally didn't use in the past. But one of the things that I think I had as a problem was that my mixes were becoming too acidic. And they were becoming too acidic because I probably have kind of a heavier hand in watering and fertilizing. So what I read was that if I added oyster shells, which, you know, basically is like a calcium component, it's also something that can help neutralize that acidity. So I happen to have some on hand because I have a chicken farm here and we use oyster shells for the chickens. So I added some into my mix. So now my mix has perlite, oyster shells, charcoal, big pieces of pine bark, and a very, very tiny touch of sphagnum moss. Now I generally don't like to use the moss because I have a tendency to overwater, but because it's really warmed up in here, I wanted to kind of give them a little boost, keep them a little bit more moist because it is hotter in the kitchen now. Spring is here, the sun's getting higher in the sky, and I think they can handle a little bit more moisture. So that's my plan with that. So they look pretty good. So now I wanted to show you one more. This is a rescue orchid. This is from a grocery store. And in typical fashion, this sad little thing was on sale because it was looking pretty sad, as you can tell. All the flowers are limp and wilted. And grocery stores just tend to really overwater their orchids, and this thing was just soaking wet in its media. So I brought it home. I have it now in this glass jar, but I have it in a plastic pot with holes. And the air can actually get into this jar. It's not like airtight. And again, it's a little algae right now, but there's water in the bottom that does not touch the container. So the humidity is constantly coming up around the plant. The bark itself is just barely moist, which is good. These leaves are so sad. And let this be another experiment, because we're going to see if we can get these leaves to perk up like these leaves have perked up. And I think they will. Just because the other three I have done it, and they did it really well. Okay, so we're going to see if we can save this beautiful phal. And in upcoming videos, I plan on going to get some more orchids. I'd like to expand into some maybe cattleyas or something different. I mean, all I've grown so far are phals. So I think I'm ready to expand into something a little bit different and maybe a little bit more challenging. I'd like to grow an orchid with like the pseudobulbs and see what I can do with that. And we'll see. We'll see if we can bring this poor sad orchid back to life. And it probably was beautiful. Look at all those flowers at one time. Now it's just sad. But we'll see what we can do. Little Louie here is begging for me to let him outside. Let's see. Do you want to see Louie? Say hi, Lulu. Say hi, Louie. Close up of Louie. Okay, there we go. We were a little too close. Say bye-bye, Lou. He says bye-bye. Till next time, happy growing.